if you look at comedy as being a big umbrella over everything funny, which can be any kind of comedy that you might like or want to perform, underneath it, when it comes to narrative comedy, which is just comedy stories, under narrative comedy, there are three big genre tents under the big umbrella. It's not all that practical, particularly if a wind blows, but bear with me. In no particular order, but I'll do it in order of popularity. The first is known as domestic comedy or dom-com. But yeah, dom-com. And domestic comedy is the world's most popular art form. It's bigger than sport. It's bigger than music. It's bigger than, I don't know, what else is there apart from sport and music? Oh yeah, it's bigger than weather. It's bigger than the news. Domestic comedy is loved by everybody all around the world, whether it's in spoken stories, sitcoms, films, whatever it might be. Everybody loves it. And there's a simple reason why. It's because domestic comedies are talking about our lives. You'll find in TV, say, there was a show called Everybody Loves Raymond, which is, regarded as a classic domestic comedy. There's Raymond, there's his wife Deborah. They've got a couple of kids who blissfully never talk. I mean, you can only hope. And his parents live across the road, and he's got a big brother who is resentful of him being their mum's favourite. Pretty simple. The thing that made Raymond the most popular show on earth at the time was simply that Raymond's problems are our problems. Raymond's having trouble at work. Raymond's gone and made a mistake at home and painted the wrong wall. Raymond he doesn't care that his kids are getting bad marks at school. And how can he, says his wife. They're your kids, you're supposed to care about this stuff. Raymond makes the mistakes that we all make. He's got to deal with paying bills. He's got to deal with his parents who keep coming over. And you can imagine the family politics that are involved. So it's fun to watch domestic comedies that can just be a group of people. One of the most successful and, in my opinion, the best written ever sitcom is The Golden Girls. The Golden Girls is about four older women who decide, oh, well, forget the world, let's move into a Florida house together. It's a brilliant show, and I might do a whole other video on The Golden Girls as to how it works and why it works. But the bottom line is they're not related apart from one daughter and one mother, but they're friends. The show Friends is a domestic comedy, and we can tell because most of the time the characters are at home, in the lounge room, in the kitchen. It's very domestic. That's where it gets its name from. So it's very popular because it does this connection, an emotional connection with us. Sure, it's not too deep. We're not watching it as if it's a Jane Austen novel right before our very eyes, but it's about us. And sometimes, for different audience members, it feels more personal than another comedy might. So, the stories tend to move kind of, even though it's comically sped up, in a normal way. People are talking in a normal way. No one's running around the lounge room. Nobody's hiding under the couch, doing a lot of mistaken identity problems. They are just being themselves, dealing with everyday problems. Uh, you could say that domestic comedy is mainly about relationships. Is mum getting on with dad? Are the kids getting on with the grandparents? Is the family dog run away? What will our whole family do? Whatever it is, it's about relationships. And it's worth looking at if you're thinking of writing a narrative comedy of any size, because what I said at the beginning, if you want a beach house, domestic comedy will give it to you faster, more effectively than any other comedy, any other drama. Even westerns struggle to beat domestic comedies, because a show like what's a good one? Oh yeah, the Big Bang Theory is a domestic comedy because they're always at home, but it gets a worldwide audience pretty well straight away. You might say, what about the Super Bowl? Yeah, what about the Super Bowl? How many people like gridiron? Come on, there's got to be someone. It's a fun look. It's an American sport. Not too big in Thailand. No, but Big Bang Theory went global. It was the most watched television offering of its time, which drives the poor sport people crazy, because they peaked at high school. It should still be going by now. Anyway, the second one uses that same level of engagement, or it's in the same field, except this time when characters in dom-com cry, occasionally you'll hear the "ah" from the studio audience, but sometimes a show like The Golden Girls could be very effective in making us, well, not burst into tears, but feel a moment of sorrow or mourning or whatever it might be. The circle of engagement is very close. When they hug, we've had hugs, we get it. When they've got a problem, I had a problem just like that. So it's close. It's kept close to us. But the next one, farce, has us doing something very different. Farces quite often have a character at the center of the entire story who can do nothing but create conflict and trouble and chaos. And what that means is it's more about human behavior. How do people behaving badly respond when good people pull them up on it? So it's a different feel. Now, what we have in terms of the location is not just a lounge room or a family home. It's kind of a home plus. There's a great one called Peter's Friends, British farce, where everybody goes, all the friends go to Peter's big mansion in the country. So it's a home, but wow, it's got 20 bedrooms. Or Fawlty Towers, very old, but still a classic farce, is based where the main characters live, but it's a bed and breakfast. So it's a home plus. And what happens in these places, well, that's where we do bring in the wigs and the mistaken identities. Because lies aren't just little ones about, honey, I lost my job. They're big ones like, where am I going to hide the dead body? So everything's written larger. The lies are bigger and bolder, and they tend to snowball, I guess. They snowball. Starts as a small thing, but as it rolls through the episode, you'll find that other things have to be attached to them. to make that true, I have to add this other little fib. The next thing you know, there are so many complicated fibs at work that the whole thing, a lot of the time, will just smash into the wall. It's a total mess. And a farce episode ends when things are irreparably worsened for the main character. So they've gotten as bad as they possibly can, and cue end credits. Da 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 ba 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 ba, and home we go. There's no solution. There is no, whoa, wow, Basil got out of that problem. That never is. Basil has to learn. He just has to learn. In every episode of Faulty Towers, don't do that again. And when that's been drummed in, nobody's waiting to see how Basil survives. It's just, oh well, maybe next week he'll be a different person. At the heart of Basil is rudeness. He's just rude. He's rude to everybody. Of course, he's got, his own prejudices and difficulties, and he's impatient and has all these other qualities. But that's the thing that helps him be the main character in a farce, because it doesn't matter if Mother Teresa walks in. He's going to have a problem with her on check-in. I mean, she's dead. That's one of them. But you get the idea. So it's human behavior that it's really concentrating on, because the relationships at the heart of a farce are not what we've really tuned in for. We've tuned in to see them be dysfunctional, as opposed to a domestic comedy where people are trying to make it work, trying to make friendships, family bonds work. But this is different. We're tuning in, say, on Faulty Towers, because Basil and his wife, well, Sybil, they really shouldn't be together, but it's too late. They're both kind of stuck with each other. So we're not watching to see, oh, how will the marriage survive? Because it's constantly having to put up with all this nonsense from Basil, but it endures because of Sybil's enormous patience, or I think her persistence too. She wants to fix him. It's just a theory. So, but the stories tend to spiral. If domestic comedy is a rat cage, then when the rats eat, we sit down and eat with them. We're in the cage, we're one of the rats. And we have an emotional engagement to them. But with farce, we may be in the rat cage, but we're probably hiding under a bed, watching all the running up and down stairs, people opening a door. Is the vicar here? No, quick, slam, door slams, vicar comes in. We're watching all this. We're watching characters with wigs on, false fronts, pretend to be someone who they're not, with a story that's escalating out of control. To a point where, as I said, it just hits the wall and that's it. Story's over. We don't need to be around for the mop up. So the circle of emotional engagement is close, but we're holding the main character away. But they're within arm's length. If we screw up, we might start seeing ourselves as having qualities similar to the main character. Oops, we don't want that. So we've got domestic comedy, and then we have the second one, which is farce, which is more elaborate in terms of stories, slightly bigger in terms of the scope of the playing out of the story, but most of the time still confined, because that's going to keep the characters where we want them. Otherwise, we could be watching an episode and Basil says, "Oh, forget it, I retire and leave." Well, what? Wouldn't have been a great ending of a series. We need to know they're boxed in, because we in our own lives feel boxed in whether we're happy or not. It's the way we build our lives. It's, you know, you heard the word cave. Where do you think we got it from? Now, the third one, well, you're going to have to get your headache medications ready. The third one is, of course, satire. Satire, in terms of emotional engagement, there is none. We don't care. The audience doesn't care. When they're watching a satirical story, they're not sitting there thinking, I'm one of these people. And they're not sitting there thinking, oh, I really recognize all these people. I'll hold them at arm's length. The audience is sitting up on a stepladder way, way up with binoculars watching the whole thing. Because satire is an attack. It's an attack on the world at hand. Not the entire world, but whichever world it's concentrating on. Great British series called Yes Minister is an attack on Whitehall, on Britain, on power, on politicians. A new one in Australia, Utopia, which is based in a planning department, again is an attack on the system, and you've got a main character who is trying to deal with all these idiots who go from public servants to the military. Everybody in the world, apart from the main character, is not thinking with their head screwed on. The purpose of satire is to somehow explain the world by showing its worst examples. There was a great series of the British series Blackadder. The fourth series has Blackadder in his new incarnation as a mid-ranking soldier in World War I in the trenches. And every week the episodes are an attack on how could this happen? That the generals are monstrous idiots. The soldiers are innocent to the point of being beyond morons. The young George character is so incredibly innocent. He just thinks this is all wonderful. It's an attack on the mindset that could create this war. It's an attack on the personalities that were driving it. And it's a bit of an attack on us, because we're the beneficiaries of it. And what are we doing? We're always starting new wars. The end of the series is just a moment on a field of Flanders in modern day times with birds chirping, so that without having to be told what the outcome of it all was, we see it right there. It's an empty field. This is what they were all fighting and dying over. So satire is right to be angry. Now, in terms of an emotional response, a lot of the time satire is frustration or a playful frustration, where we know this is bad and the characters are behaving badly, but we're kind of enjoying it. In terms of the emotional connection, the great American comedy animated series South Park, probably the greatest of all time, well up to date, is a satire picking on small town America. Does it work? No. Are there any characters in this town who are any good? No, not really. Okay, but one of the characters every week dies, like he's Kenny. He's the one who wears the orange, face mask thing, and he dies. We never even hear what he says. He just says, wah, 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 wah. That's it. But he gets run over by buffaloes, shot out of a cannon. He ends up going to hell to live with Saddam Hussein. Like, this is the worst possible things you could do to any human being. But it's a guarantee nobody ever calls the TV network and says, look, my husband and I were watching South Park and you've gone and killed one of your major characters. How could you do this, you monsters? Because we have no emotional engagement with Kenny. We don't care. And I mean, if you do care, then just don't watch the show. But it's the best example that satire can give where we actually don't care. If in Utopia, all of a sudden the building collapsed and everybody died, most viewers would go, the building collapsed. No, I like this show. It's very difficult to write satire because the audience doesn't care. So how do you write a story where you're figuring, the audience is not really going to be watching this apart from on a sort of an intellectual basis, as an intellectual exercise? Laughing, but not there is no room for, from the studio audience. There's none of that. That is the key difficulty in satire, which is why, if you're good at writing dramas, it's really difficult because we get in the habit of making the audience care. We use things like, the save a cat theory, where you have a main character who goes out of their way to help someone else. They do it early in the story, so we say, she's all right. I think I'm on her side. In satire, there are no sides. And the rat cage is, it's full of little bicycles and wheels so the rats can power the lights for us. It's that bad. Domestic comedy, farce, satire. Yes, there can be hybrids where one is a bit like that. There's a series called The Royal Family, which is domestic, but it's also a bit of a satire because it's an attack on modern families and how they work. And you'll find in The Simpsons, they'll cover all three. They've been going for 114 years, so they need everything they can get. But it's a good way, it's a good exercise to look at an idea you have and work out which camp is predominantly where your idea lives. They are the most popular ways of getting your audience, the biggest audience on earth. Satire, domestic comedy, and farce are, without doubt, the most popular art forms ever created. Sorry, artists, sorry, footballers, but that's the truth.